Many people love to use sports cliches or metaphors to get their point across when it comes to the world of business. Go big or go home. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. I could go on and on forever. Well, today's guest is going to give you some business strategies that he's taken straight from his basketball life, working with players like Steph Curry, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and many other NBA superstars that directly translate to your business or corporation. Our guest will also tell you why mastering the fundamentals, much like in any sport, is the key to your success as an entrepreneur. Stick around. You don't want to miss today's episode.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy.
Today's guest is Stein Jr., world-renowned basketball performance coach, corporate speaker, podcast host, and social media influencer. Alan has worked with NBA superstars such as Kevin Durant, Victor Oladipo, and number one pick Markelle Fultz. Alan specializes in helping corporations utilize many of the same strategies that elite NBA players use to perform at a world-class level. If you're looking to take your game to the next level, stay tuned because Alan is going to help you raise your game.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know the audience is going to get so much out of tonight's episode. This is absolutely amazing. You know, what brings up something very interesting here? It's a Sunday night. I normally don't record on Sunday nights. I'm sure you know you're a dad, and we've got a lot going on. But you know what? Leadership and leaders step up and do whatever's necessary to get the job done. So thanks a lot for rearranging the schedule and making this thing happen.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
All right, man, let's get this thing underway. We had an opportunity to meet, I guess, about 8 months ago, and you actually gave a talk, and you blew me away. As soon as I heard that, I said, I've got to have you on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, we met at Jesse Itzer's retreat, which was mind-blowing in and of itself, and the feeling's very mutual. I really enjoyed every second that I had to connect with you and really enjoyed presenting to the folks at the retreat. And, once you told me you had a podcast, I've been devouring your episodes and I'm honored and excited to be here with you.
Well, thank you very much. You know, one of the things as a speaker, which I really, really appreciate is, man, when it was go time, you just got up and I don't think you took a breath. It was just like boom, 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 boom. And it was like, wow, man, this guy is like on fire. So let's start with public speaking, because I think so many people out here are wanting to do more in the public realm. How did you develop your skills to be a public speaker?
Well, what's funny is I've been speaking for most of my career, but for almost 20 years, I've been speaking exclusively in the basketball arena. I've been a basketball performance coach. So my audience has always been high school age players and high school and college coaches. So I feel very comfortable in front of an audience. But I made the leap about a year ago to enter the corporate sector and share all of the life lessons and principles and tools and strategies that I learned through the game of basketball. But I'm sharing those and teaching folks how to apply those to business. And once I decided to make that leap, I really started studying the craft of public speaking much more closely. And, I have a speaking coach. I have a writing coach. I mean, I'm taking this very seriously. And it's actually funny that you said that because as much as you may have enjoyed my passion and the fact that I didn't take a single breath for that hour, those are actually two things that I need to work on now that I'm in the corporate space, because I tend to leave on, and I'm using air quotes even though this is a podcast, I tend to leave on my coach voice, and I'm always high octane and extremely passionate and very high energy. And one of the things I need to do to become a more efficient and more effective speaker is learn how to tone that down a little bit and learn how to take it from a 10 down to a 6 and learn how to have some pacing in my speech and change my tonality. So, when you're in a gym and you've got 150 teenage boys looking to become basketball players, you tend to ramp up the energy. But when I'm running a corporate workshop for, say, 30 people in a small business, I need to learn how to pace that. So I'm glad that you embraced my passion and embraced the fact that I never take a breath. But those are two things that I'm slowly working on so that I can become, again, a much more effective speaker.
No, I think the style was absolutely great. It was delivered with an energy that kept everybody captivated. And speaking of which, working with high school players, the millennials, right?
Yep.
What is the secret of keeping their attention?
I think first and foremost, what you just said, you have to be passionate. You have to show them that you care about what you're talking about. I mean, and this goes for any listener, not just millennials, but if you want the person listening to you to care about what you're saying, then it has to be visible to them that you care about what you're saying. So if they think you're just going through the motions, or this is some canned talk that you've given 100 times, if they're not feeling it, they're going to tune out very quickly. And one thing I've really learned with dealing with millennials, they always want to know the why. They want to know what's in it for them, and that's okay. And I think that's my job, or anyone's job as a speaker, is to raise the perceived relevance and connect those dots. Constantly bring everything back to why this is important to them, how this will affect them, how this will help them improve. So if I'm telling a story, and if any part of me thinks there's the slightest bit of ambiguity for the listener, then I make sure to connect those dots as crystal clear as I possibly can, so that you're keeping their attention. And you have to switch it up. You can't tell a 9-minute story unless it is the most captivating story in the history of the world. You have to keep things moving and keep things fresh.
And when dealing with these players, we're always looking for the distinctions of what makes a great player. Now, you've worked with some of the best. What differentiates the best from just okay?
What they do during the unseen hours. The spotlight is on, or the cameras are on, only a very small fraction of any given day or any given week. It's what those players commit to doing during the unseen hours when no one else is watching that will determine whether or not they're successful. So if you and I were to flip on an NBA game tonight and we're watching the best players in the world play, I mean, we're going to watch them for 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. But what did they do leading up to the game? What have they done this week in practice and in workouts? And then if you really want to look from 30,000 feet, what have those guys been doing for the last 20 to 25 years to put them in a position to play and perform in that game tonight? And the habits, the routines, the rituals, the disciplines that those folks have when no one else is watching, that's what makes someone great.
You told an interesting story. Was it Scotty that you were telling a story about in the high school gym?
Stephen Curry?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
Tell that
Stephen
story.
Curry and Kobe Bryant. Yes, there's a couple stories, and this is one area where I feel very fortunate to have been in the career that I was in. So I was able to work at two very prestigious high schools here in the D.C. area. High schools that Kevin Durant attended, Victor Oladipo, Markelle Fultz. I mean, we had some really good players. But the fact that I was working at really good high schools, both were Nike programs, that opened the gateway for me to work a bunch of Nike's skills academies. And I got to work events for LeBron James, and Kobe Bryant, and Steve Nash, some really, really remarkable players. And while I was there, I was able to see and be a fly on the wall during their workouts and during their interaction with the campers and even some of the side conversations that they've had. So what I like to consider myself, as much as I'd like to say that I've created some things, I also take a lot of pride in being a curator. And I'm very thankful that I've been able to see a lot of things that I know most people aren't privy to. So I feel it's my obligation, since I was the eyes and ears behind the scenes, to pull the life lessons out of those experiences and share them with other people. And as I've mentioned, now that I'm in the corporate space, I'm blown away by how much transfer there is from the game of basketball to business, and that the habits and routines that someone like Kobe Bryant had as a player transfer perfectly over to the business world. And, I did have a chance to watch Kobe Bryant work out early one morning. This was a decade ago. This was in 2007. And if any of your listeners aren't real basketball enthusiasts, just know that in 2007, Kobe Bryant was the best player in the game. I mean, Michael Jordan had already retired twice at that point, and LeBron James was phenomenal, but he wasn't the LeBron James that we know today. He was still climbing that mountain. So Kobe was the best player in the world, and I had a chance to watch him participate in a really early morning workout. It was an individual workout with him and his trainer, and I was blown away by how basic the stuff he was doing. He was doing very basic footwork drills and rudimentary offensive moves to get started, and I was just blown away by the simplicity, and it really surprised me. Here I am going to be a fly on the wall to watch the best player in the world work out, and I figured he was going to be doing something with a lot of sizzle and a lot of sexiness, and it was very basic in nature. And later that day at camp, I asked him, I was like, Kobe, you're the best player in the world. Why are you doing such basic drills? And he kind of chuckled, but with all seriousness said, why do you think I'm the best player in the world? Because I never get bored with the basics. And, as a young coach at the time, that really had a major impact and influence on me, that the best don't get bored with the basics, that they're committed to the fundamentals, that they're committed to doing what's basic, but they know very well that just because something's basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. And I think that's a pitfall that a lot of people fall into, is they think basic and easy are synonyms, and they're not. Basic in theory is not easy to execute. And for a guy like Kobe Bryant to be as established and as polished as he was, to be in a gym that early in the morning going through basic footwork moves in order to continue to master his craft, made a lifelong impact on me. And I've used that in my own life, not only just professionally, but even personally. And it's one of the main pillars of what I preach to anyone that I'm talking to, is stay focused on the basics and stay focused on the process.
Yeah, clients and prospects ask me all the time, how come I'm not getting the results that I really want in this particular area? I said, no one's holding you accountable. Yeah. But come on, give me some really cool strategies and tools and techniques. No one's holding you accountable. People want it more complicated than it is.
Yeah, and they think that it should be more complicated than it is. And there's no need for us to overcomplicate things. I mean, I'm a very simple person, and I don't say that to diminish myself. I actually say that with a lot of pride. I take pride in the fact that I live my life by a handful of very basic principles and strategies. And to keep the record straight, by no means have I mastered this. I have challenges and I step into pitfalls just like your listeners do. But I'm aware that what I need to be successful and what I need to be happy are just a handful of basic principles. But they need to be done religiously, and they need to be done with flawless execution. But anytime anything in my life starts to go off the rails in any area of my life, it's usually because I'm skipping over something that's very basic. And to me, that's what the most rewarding part of seeing a player like Kobe Bryant do that was the basics are available to all of us. The concepts behind his philosophy of living by the basics, they're available to you. They're available to me. They're available to all of our listeners. So I actually was relieved by that, because think about it. If you had to have something really complicated and really tricky in order to be successful, that would be very demotivating. That would scratch off 90% of the people listening already. But the fact that all we need to be successful are a commitment to the basics, to me, that's really liberating, and it motivates me, because now I know for certain that success is something that I choose, and I choose it by sticking to the process and sticking by the basics. I don't have to worry about luck. I don't have to worry about good fortune. I don't have to worry about the ball bouncing the right way. I can control my success by sticking to the basics.
And what are some of those basics for you?
For me, first and foremost, I put most of my time and energy into developing positive habits. I believe it's our habits that determine whether or not we're successful. And see, people are always going to do what they want to do, and they're going to do what's convenient for them, and they're going to do what's easy and just falls in their lap. But do you do the right thing regardless? And for me, it's all about habits, because your habits are what will ultimately dictate your success. Because success is not the things that we just occasionally do. Success is a result of the things that we do every single day. So I'm hyper aware of my habits. And again, I feel that just out of humility and full transparency that, yeah, I have some habits that are far from perfect that I'm still working on. And I have a ways to go before I feel that I've really got everything on lock. But generally speaking, I'm so hyper aware of my habits now, much more so than I was in my 30s or even 20s. So it's my habits that I pay a lot of attention to. So my morning routine, my evening routine, things like constantly being open to reading and watching and listening to as many things as I can to stir growth. I'm very big into relationships. So, I'm constantly reaching out and connecting. One of the things that I really took away from the retreat when Frank Shamrock spoke, who, for anyone listening, if you follow UFC, back in the 90s, this guy was the deadliest man in the world. He talked about a plus equal minus system that he uses in his life, and that he makes sure he always has a relationship with a plus, which is someone that's a little bit ahead of him in life, someone that can serve as a mentor to him. He always has a relationship with somebody that he considers a peer, somebody that's equal to him, and they talk, they exchange best practices, they figure out what's going on in each other's life to help each other. And then he also has a minus. He doesn't say that to diminish the other person. Someone that's behind him, someone that reminds him of himself 5 to 10 years ago, that now he reaches a hand out to mentor them. And I just love that. It was one of the most valuable things I took from the retreat, is having this plus equal minus system in my life at all times. So, habits and relationships are probably the foundational pillars of what I focus on a daily basis.
And specifically, what are some of the top 3 that you focus on?
From a habit standpoint, a lot of it has to do with self-awareness. It's funny. I hear people all the time say things like, I'm not a morning person. And, that's kind of a window into their self-awareness. For me, I do my best work early in the morning. I'm an early riser by nature, and I do my best thinking. Physically, I'm at my best in the morning, so I get my workouts in the morning. So I've learned to develop a schedule. Now, I'm self-employed. I'm an entrepreneur as a speaker and consultant and trainer. But I've built my schedule around when I know that I perform at my best. We're recording this podcast at 7 p.m. East Coast time, which is perfect. But if you would have said, can we do this tonight at 10 p.m. East Coast time, I would have politely declined, because I'm worthless at 10 p.m. I mean, my brain doesn't function near as well, and I wouldn't have been able to provide you with near as much insight. So I've learned those things about myself. So early morning routine, I do the Headspace app the moment I wake up in the morning, which is a 10-minute guided meditation. I usually have that followed by some type of physical exercise. Sometimes it's a pretty strenuous workout. Sometimes it can be easier, but just something to get me flowing. And then I spend 3 to 4 hours doing some dedicated work, whether that's writing or recording or preparing for a talk. But that's my sweet spot. Certainly, I sprinkle in a healthy breakfast and healthy lunch. But I get most of what I want to accomplish for the day in before lunch. And certainly, I don't put my feet up on the desk as soon as the lunch bell hits, but that's when I get most of my work. So that habit of having the self-awareness to know that that's when I'm most productive, when I'm most effective and most efficient, has really served me well. And again, it doesn't mean that I can't perform anytime after that. It just means I've known my sweet spot. For me, in the evenings, so after we record this, I'm a big documentary guy. I find they're a great way to learn. But I also like the craft of documentaries and learning the different, cinematography and so forth is something that's always fascinated me. So I'll probably watch a documentary and then do a little reading before I go to bed tonight. And that's kind of how I bookend my day. And I've been on that schedule for a while. But those 2 things in particular have really helped improve my efficiency and my effectiveness in everything that I do. I mean, not even just work. Even in being a present and attentive father to my 3 kids, I tend to thrive and do a much better job when I've got my schedule under my control like that.
You've had the opportunity to work closely with some of the greatest basketball coaches on the planet. What do the best basketball coaches do? What separates them from the average?
Their ability to create a culture. And if we take a step back, here's the way, and you said something extremely powerful before, which was the word of accountability. And the best coaches in the world, they're able to instill individual accountability for themselves and the players and coaches on their team, but also a collective accountability where everyone feels that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. And the quick flow that I use, and this has been any great coach that I've been around has followed this. Now, they may use different terminology, but ultimately, the first thing a coach does is make sure everyone on the team knows the identity of this team. Who are we? What do we stand for? What are we trying to accomplish? Why is that important? Why should you make the personal sacrifices that I'm going to ask you to make to be a part of this team? And once a team has a solid identity of who they are, then you move directly into standards. And standards, rules are given and handed down and expected to be followed. That would be a coach saying, here's 10 things that you can't do, and if you do them, you're going to be in some deep trouble. And most people don't like to be ordered or bossed or managed. Most people would prefer to have some buy-in. So the best coaches I've been around actually create standards. They get input from the players and input from their coaches and say, okay, here's our identity. What type of standards do we need to uphold in order to live out that identity? If this is what we're trying to accomplish, what's the code that all of us need to live by to make that happen? And that way everybody has not only buy-in, but they have believe in on the team. And then the next step is what you teed up so perfectly, is accountability. Now, everyone needs to be held accountable to living out those standards and holding those standards. And here's the thing, Thor, if you and I agree that one of our standards is we will always be at practice on time, and you show up to practice 3 minutes late tomorrow, you're already aware of the fact that you've broken a standard that you've agreed to. Now, I care about you because I'm either your teammate or your coach, so I'm going to hold you accountable and let you know that being 3 minutes late is unacceptable. But the funny part is, I really don't have to come down on you that hard. You already know that you didn't live up to something that you gave us your word that you would do. And one of the most powerful emotions that any human being has on the negative side is of disappointment. There's very few things that make people feel worse than disappointing someone they care about. So when you show up to practice 3 minutes late tomorrow, you already feel bad because we've created this standard and we hold each other accountable. And in my opinion, the word culture is used a lot in sports and in business, but the definition of culture is how well an organization or a team upholds the standards that they created. If you uphold those standards really, really well, you have a winning culture. And if you don't, then obviously you don't. And your culture is what drives your results, whether it's your profits in business or it's the scoreboard in basketball. Doing those things consistently over time are a result of your culture. Now, can you have a bad culture and still land a big contract, or can you have a big culture and still win some games? Yeah, absolutely. But then you're the exception, not the rule. If you look at any winning organization, I mean, look at sports, look at Duke basketball, look at the Golden State Warriors, look at the New England Patriots. I mean, these organizations have tremendous culture from the owner all the way down to the last player on the bench. And it's culture that will determine, our success in any endeavor. And that's what the best coaches in the world do. They end up creating a winning culture by having an identity, by creating standards, by holding everybody else accountable.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter @Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
Be on the lookout for part 2 of our conversation with Alan, where he tells us the key to dealing with superstar employees, as well as why you should worry about the process instead of the results. I'll see you guys on another edition of Peak Performers Podcast.